Muchas gracias. La moderación la haré en español, ya que tenemos el privilegio de contar con esta estrategia de multilingüismo. Agradezco muchísimo el honor de moderar este panel. Es un panel, y el que sigue, que estaremos hablando sobre la evaluación de la investigación. Nos ha tocado una responsabilidad muy grande discutir justamente una de las dos palancas principales, a mi parecer, para avanzar el acceso abierto diamante. Sin duda, una es el financiamiento, la cooperación, y la otra es la evaluación de la investigación. Es un gran reto para los sistemas de evaluación poder comprender las necesidades del acceso abierto diamante para darle la oportunidad de tener un espacio en la evaluación de la investigación que sea justamente reconocido y que permita hacer visible la contribución de todas las partes en este modelo de publicación científica. Y tengo el privilegio de moderar la conversación con grandes ponentes. El día de hoy está conectada la doctora Ana María Cheto en una presentación virtual. Muchísimas gracias, doctora Ana María, por estar. Ya la pueden ver en su pantalla. Está la doctora Judith Naidorf, representando a Folek Claxo. Ustedes pueden ver el resumen completo de sus biografías en la página web, como ha sido una constante dentro de todo el evento. Mr. Jan Polonen, bienvenido. Muchas gracias de la Federación of Finnish Learned Societies. Y el profesor Mosa Moshavela, de casa de la Universidad de Cape Town. Pues sin más, muchísimas gracias. Quisiera pedirles, pudiéramos tratar de controlar un poco el tiempo. Tenemos 15 minutos por ponente y al final vamos a tener una sesión de preguntas y respuestas de 20 minutos. Muchísimas gracias y sin más le doy la bienvenida a la doctora Ana María Cheto. Es un honor, doctora, que esté usted aquí. Adelante, por favor.
Muchísimas gracias, Ariana. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here with you. I'm very sorry that I'm not physically present. It would have, of course, been wonderful for me, but South Africa for us is very far away and it's not always possible to be physically present. Well, I'd like to first thank the organizers and particularly Ariana for this invitation to speak at the session on research assessment within the Global Open Access Framework. And I'd like to start by recognizing that in the age of globalization, we all in North and South, in East and West, we all contribute to varying degrees to science as we know it today, as it is known today, namely as a socially, politically, and economically legitimized body of knowledge that is nourished by a growing international community of established practitioners. But deep asymmetries persist because the contributions to science from the so-called South, namely mostly former colonies, are considered of low value and of little interest for the market. The products of our science are largely ignored by practitioners abroad, and they are rarely used in applications of economic value in our own countries. In short, our science is largely subject to a system that has the power, the money, and the means to decide what science matters, what is good science. A system that is deeply influenced by industrial management principles, inspired by productivism, and that has led to the commodification of the products of science, of scientific publishing in particular. The articles have become now a commodity, not so much a means to communicate the new products of our research, but as a commodity. And this commercialization of research production has been accompanied by the creation of bibliometric and scientometric services, commercial as well, of course, which are actively promoted as sources of indicators of good performance, both individual and institutional. Research evaluation systems favor those who publish in journals with high impact factors and who receive large grants. And as a result, the researchers who have already succeeded are more likely to succeed again in a spiral of increasing returns, which encourages the ongoing growth of these asymmetries. There has been a substantial increase in research and development expenditure in the last decades mainly, and this increase in expenditure and the drive for productivity have certainly contributed to the expansion of scientific activity already since the end of the Second World War. Much more science is produced today than decades ago. However, this expansion has not been accompanied by a commensurate increase in the quality and the relevance of science. Some scientists even speak of a stagnation of science. And frankly, looking from my own field, I do agree with this assertion. A stagnation in particular of the fundamental frontier research that underpins applications, both within and outside science, and that forms the basis of modern technologies. Moreover, the market created by bibliometric incentives, combined with the adoption of the so-called open access gold model, has allowed a handful of large companies, which form the transnational oligopoly responsible for around 75% of the published articles, to substantially increase their returns. Now, by concluding commercial agreements at institutional or national level at prices that rise every year beyond the rate of inflation and the budgetary possibilities of academic institutions, these companies produce a significant drain on public finances. However, it is important to understand that the emergence of these large for-profit publishing corporations is not a failure of the hegemonic system of science per se, but a phenomenon that the system itself has reinforced in order to maintain this hegemonic status. Similarly, the current dominant research evaluation is not a failure of the hegemonic system of science, but an integral part of this system, which ensures its continued hegemony. If we are looking for someone to blame for this failure, it should be the market-dominated global economic system that has penetrated and undermined almost all areas of activity. For instance, how can we understand that in the world of art, a young US-Chinese entrepreneur pays over $6 million for a so-called work of art consisting of a banana fixed to the wall, which he then eats at a press conference with the aim of making history? Or how can we understand that in the world of politics, the president of a nation appoints his country's wealthiest entrepreneurs to the key governmental policy-making positions? If we lose sight of this global market-dominated landscape, our efforts to change the research assessment system, however laudable, will have limited impact. We may reach some consensus on the inclusion of research activities or products not previously considered, such as those advocated by the open science movement, or on reducing the weight of quantitative indicators related to the journal rather than the article. But will these adjustments to the scientific edifice lead to a change in the structure and the functioning? Will they lead to a decoupling of the research assessment system from the for-profit publishing? There was a session yesterday at this meeting on open access as a public good with Mega Azur, Ariana Becerril, and Anna Persik, moderated by Heather Joseph, 4 excellent participants. I hope you all had the opportunity to listen to it. So I have little to add, except to say that scientific knowledge in general is a public good, in the very sense that greater access to it does not diminish its value for anyone. On the contrary, it enriches us all. Genuine, legitimate open access to scientific publications free of charge for authors and for readers has been the dominant practice in Latin America, as you know, since before the term diamond open access was invented in Europe. This practice ensures that the academy retains ownership of the knowledge it generates and that it takes responsibility for its dissemination by establishing the channels and ways to make it accessible. In Latin America, the practice has been that when a research institution or a scientific society decides for some strategic reason to create a journal, it takes on the responsibility of maintaining it. Our region has shown that this alternative to commercial publishing is not only feasible, but also convenient for the reasons already mentioned, and despite the usual budget constraints, it can also be sustainable. So decommercializing the publishing enterprise requires concerted action by policymakers and the scientific community. We cannot do it alone. Some institutions in different countries have taken partial steps in the right direction. For instance, by cancelling subscriptions to giant for-profit publishers. But this is only the beginning. We do not see research institutions or scientific societies in other countries taking or regaining control of their journals and introducing the costs of non-commercial journal publishing into their regular budgets, which are very, very low costs. The oligopoly still has the handle on the expensive publishing business and its closely linked scientometric indexing and ranking business. A significant shift away from this business is unlikely to take place unless policymakers, both at the institutional and at the national levels across the globe, recognize that this is in the interest of their communities, that investment in non-commercial publishing is of great benefit to public finances, and that the promotion and support of domestic production of high-quality journal output goes hand in hand with the promotion of high-quality research and its proper valorization. If such recognition is translated into clear policy action, the desired change in the research assessment will be much easier. It will be a natural consequence of the system. We will continue to develop our non-commercial information systems. We will continue to push for truly open access publications, to design more appropriate indicators of research performance, to promote the opening up of science, and to come together in meetings like this unique gathering to build synergies and identify allies. All of this work is necessary, but it will not be enough if those empowered to take decisions all over the globe do not make the right decisions, and the sooner the better. I trust that this meeting will make a clear statement in this regard. And thank you very much for your attention.
Muchísimas gracias, Ana María, por tan inspiradora conversación. Creo que se han tocado puntos que merecerían días completos para poderlos analizar. Estas asimetrías entre el mercado global comercial y cómo esto ha afectado a los sistemas de evaluación y justo cómo los problemas no han sido fallas de los sistemas de evaluación, más un problema que han tenido que cargar originado precisamente por este mercado global comercial, ¿no? Me ha gustado mucho que has usado esta palabra que seguro en español no existe, pero en inglés sí, la descomercialización de la publicación. Creo que sería algo que habría que pensar, ¿eso qué significa? La cancelación de contratos con las empresas comerciales será solo el comienzo, como tú lo dijiste, estoy de acuerdo, y quizá me quedo, y espero nos quedemos en este panel, con the sooner the better. Creo que hay un sentido de urgencia de hacer cosas concretas lo más pronto posible, porque estamos degradando el bien público que tenemos en nuestras manos. Muchas gracias, Ana María. Espero te puedas quedar para la parte de preguntas y respuestas. Bien, sin más, pasamos a nuestra siguiente presentadora, Judith, por favor. El micrófono es tuyo.
Hola, muy buenos días. Es un placer para mí estar aquí en África, en Sudáfrica, viniendo desde Latinoamérica. Muchas gracias a los organizadores y organizadoras del evento por permitirnos a nosotros, a nosotras, a nosotres desde tan lejos estar aquí. Somos una gran delegación de latinoamericanos, latinoamericanas jóvenes, no tan jóvenes, que, no por mí, yo no soy joven, pero hay ahí bastantes jóvenes que han venido gracias al apoyo de los organizadores del evento. Muchas gracias, Reggie, todos los que han permitido que podemos llegar hasta acá desde tan lejos y bueno, esperemos estar a la altura del evento y bueno, ha sido un placer conversar con ustedes. Y antes de hacer la presentación también quiero agradecer todo el apoyo que hemos recibido, en particular como Argentina, en este momento tan horrible que estamos viviendo en nuestro país. Ayer se cumple un año de un gobierno que está destruyendo las políticas públicas en Argentina, que está destruyendo el Estado y lo está haciendo mintiendo. Ayer hizo una declaración el presidente llena de fake news. Si ustedes quieren pueden ver en YouTube un discurso completamente mentiroso diciendo que Argentina está en un gran momento y en esa situación desastrosa se está produciendo un cientificidio. Gracias. Gracias por apoyarnos. Voy a hablar entonces hoy de los consensos a las transformaciones, aportes para una evaluación científica y académica abierta, responsable e inclusiva, desde FOLEC, como coordinadora del Foro Latinoamericano sobre Evaluación Científica de CLACSO, el Consejo Latinoamericano de Ciencias Sociales. Lo primero que quiero plantear, bueno, es que, como todos sabemos, y por eso estamos aquí, la ciencia abierta es verdaderamente un cambio paradigmático, es un cambio total en la forma de concebir la ciencia. En ese sentido, acordamos todos los aquí presentes con que la ciencia abierta se fundamenta justamente en el libre acceso al conocimiento, promoviendo la transparencia en la investigación, la accesibilidad a datos y publicaciones y la colaboración abierta entre científicos, científicas y la sociedad. La ciencia abierta, bueno, esta definición que todos y todas conocemos, vale la pena una vez más revisarla, se define como un constructo inclusivo que combina diversos movimientos y prácticas con el fin de que los conocimientos científicos multilingües estén abiertamente disponibles y sean accesibles para todos, así como reutilizables por todos, se incrementen las colaboraciones científicas y el intercambio de información en beneficio de la ciencia y la sociedad, y se abran los procesos de creación, evaluación y comunicación de los conocimientos científicos a los agentes sociales más allá de la comunidad científica tradicional. La ciencia abierta y el acceso abierto plantean un horizonte de transformación profunda en la producción y circulación y uso del conocimiento. En este marco resulta imprescindible transformar los modos de evaluación científica y académica para alinearlos con sus principios y canales de comunicación. En ese sentido es fundamental cuestionar el papercentrismo. ¿Qué es el papercentrismo? Es una visión limitada que prioriza las publicaciones como el único indicador de calidad e impacto. Es necesario trascender este enfoque hegemónico, reconociendo, por un lado, un espectro más amplio de contribuciones científicas y académicas, como datos abiertos, recursos educativos, trabajos con y en comunidades y territorios locales y en el diseño de políticas públicas. Una diversidad de agentes, actividades y productos y efectos fundamentales que han sido históricamente invisibilizados en las evaluaciones, en las trayectorias de nuestros científicos y nuestras científicas al momento de sus evaluaciones. También, ¿qué es lo que pretendemos? Promover la bibliodiversidad. ¿Qué es eso? La bibliodiversidad se refiere a la existencia de múltiples formatos, registros y circuitos de distribución de conocimiento científico. En particular, en el caso de las ciencias sociales y las humanidades, hay que reconocer que, por ejemplo, en el caso del libro, y aquí hay muchos trabajos que se han venido llevando a cabo, el libro es realmente un excelente formato que permite in extenso el despliegue de argumentos e ideas, ¿no? Que a veces el paper se queda corto. Es realmente un maravilloso formato para comunicar resultados de investigación. Lamentablemente, las evaluaciones han infravalorado los libros, ¿sí? Y ha ganado terreno en los últimos años tanto el paper que muchos de nosotros muchas veces nos hemos visto menos motivados a publicar libros, sabiendo que en las evaluaciones casi no se nos cuenta, o incluso muchas veces hay como una cierta desconfianza. No, porque el libro no tiene referato, o uno tiene cierto acuerdo con la editorial, entonces no vale tanto como un paper. Bueno, estas cuestiones. Por otro lado, además de la inserción internacional de la investigación en artículos en inglés, particularmente para los hispanohablantes o francófonos o en portugués y otros idiomas, hay que ponderar su relevancia social a partir de la cultura y la sociedad en la que está siendo producida, ¿sí? Si nosotros queremos llegar a la sociedad, tener algún tipo de impacto en la sociedad, debemos escribir en nuestro idioma, ¿no? Sin embargo, en las evaluaciones, cuando publicamos en inglés, nos ponen un like. Las ciencias sociales y humanas perderían probablemente su razón de ser y el apoyo de su sociedad si se desconectan de su contexto cultural y social. Los libros editados localmente son un canal fundamental para cumplir con esta función. Por eso es muy importante también apoyar a las editoriales y las publicaciones de libros de editoriales universitarias en particular. Otra cuestión fundamental, el multilingüismo. Ya, voy adelantando. Sí, perdón. El concepto de multilingüismo refiere al uso de múltiples lenguas en procesos de producción, publicación y circulación del conocimiento científico. Este fenómeno implica considerar por lo menos dos cuestiones medulares. La cuestión de la hipercentralidad del inglés entendiendo que la indexación mainstream funciona como dispositivo de selección y competencia científica y que representa una modalidad de exclusión para buena parte de la producción mundial. Y por otro lado, la circulación y visibilidad se encuentra, por tanto, sujeta a las capacidades lingüísticas que las audiencias desarrollen para poder leer, comprender y hacer uso y citar a las publicaciones. Al mismo tiempo, las plataformas y bases de información científica han tomado al inglés como lengua franca, por lo que las principales bases indexadoras, ranking de revistas, índices de impacto y citación son también desarrolladas en inglés. La centralidad de la evaluación científica también es algo sobre la que quiero hacer hincapié. La evaluación no es solo un acto técnico o neutral, es un fenómeno profundamente performativo. No solo describe, clasifica y valora el conocimiento, sino que también lo produce, lo moldea y lo orienta. Transformar la evaluación científica y académica es transformar los modos de producción, circulación, valoración y apropiación del conocimiento científico. En suma, es esencial. Perdón. Yo porque el tiempo... Tiene razón. En suma, es esencial considerar los elementos anteriores para guiar los procesos de transformación de los modos de evaluación científica y académica, considerando especialmente que no existe ninguna razón para aplicar una jerarquía general de lenguas y formatos en la evaluación de las ciencias sociales y humanas. Todas las formas de publicación y los idiomas locales son necesarios. Es decir, para conseguir una ciencia abierta, relevante e inclusiva, es preciso no limitar los canales de comunicación. En este sentido, los mejores aliados del acceso abierto son la bibliodiversidad y el multilingüismo. Perdón, no había pasado el... Bueno, voy a ir un poquito más rápido. Hacia un enfoque integral de la transformación. Voy a nombrar rápidamente... Si quieren pueden sacar fotos y después lo ven en sus casas. Para abordar una transformación de la evaluación se requiere abordar múltiples dimensiones interrelacionadas, una dimensión política, axiológica, institucional normativa, praxeológica, qué queremos cambiar y por qué valores debería guiar la evaluación, cómo transformar las reglas y la estructura y cómo llevar a cabo esos cambios. Estos temas... ¿Dónde los trabajamos? Los trabajamos en nuestra declaración de principios. Yo traje ahí algunas impresas para repartir, luego se las reparto a quien las quiera y si no, pueden escanear. Les dejo un ratito para quien los quiera escanear. Ahí están los principios de la declaración de FOLEC, que la hemos elaborado en conjunto con muchos de los que están aquí presentes en junio de 2022 en México, en la Asamblea General de Claxo. Si no, luego las reparto, que el que quiera me la pide. Y lo que hemos creado este año es otro espacio muy importante para nosotros, muy querido, que queremos venir a presentar hoy aquí, con esto cierro, que es la Escuela de Evaluadoras y Evaluadores, que es un espacio para reflexionar juntas y juntos, en conjunto. Este año ha tenido 640 participantes de 21 países. Este año ha sido dictado en español. Puede replicarse en otros idiomas. Si les interesa, podemos dictarlo en otros idiomas, nos contactan y lo podemos replicar. Y estos son algunos de los starting points, no lo voy a trabajar ahora. Esta es la estrategia pedagógica. Lo que les voy a dejar nomás es el diploma superior. Ya está abierta la inscripción para el diploma superior. Y aquí tienen, si quieren escanear, la propuesta pedagógica. Está abierta la inscripción en este momento en español, pero ustedes pueden ver los goals, digamos, todas la estrategia pedagógica y demás cuestiones. Ahí creo que la página de Claxo está traducible al inglés, la pueden ver. Y bueno, realmente esa es nuestra contribución a la transformación de la evaluación, y lo seguimos conversando. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Judith, por recordarnos que la evaluación no solamente es una cuestión práctica o técnica, que tiene una dimensión performativa y que esa dimensión performativa le da un potencial de ser un agente transformador en este escenario. Muchas gracias por eso, y también por la Escuela de Evaluadoras y Evaluadores, que me parece un aspecto clave, porque no solo son cuestiones de política científica, sino hay que trabajar con las personas que son partes de comités de evaluación. Tuve la fortuna de ser docente en esta escuela, en esta edición, y la interacción con cientos de personas, de evaluadores y evaluadoras de América Latina, ha sido una experiencia, me parece, única y que deberíamos repetir. Muchas gracias, Judith. Y sin más, le doy la palabra a Jan, bueno, pues para que nos comparta lo que trae para nosotros el día de hoy. Tratemos, ojalá, 15 minutitos, pero si no, bueno, pues trataremos de ser flexibles con el tiempo. Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you very much. And greetings from Finland, the happiest country in the world. At least I am happy and also very honored to have been invited to represent Quora as one of the members of the steering board, and to join this important summit and also the panel, and to talk about how reform of research assessment enhances Diamond Open Access. So in this presentation, I will first explain what is Quora. I will then point out to some disadvantages in research assessment to Diamond Open Access journals, and in the end, I will also consider what difference Quora aspires to make. So let's start with Quora, the Coalition for Reforming Research Assessment. During the past decade, several international initiatives have been launched to promote responsible research assessment. Responsible research assessment is an umbrella term for approaches to assessment which incentivize, reflect, and reward the plural characteristics of high-quality research in support of diverse and inclusive research cultures. And Quora builds, of course, on top of the previous initiatives. We are all going in the same direction. The agreement on reforming research assessment was published in 2022, and it has been signed already over 800 organizations from over 50 countries. And also behind the agreement, there was a broad-based co-creative process involving over 350 organizations from over 40 countries. The agreement includes principles, commitments, and 5-year time frame for reforms with a public action plan that organizations make public. The agreement establishes a common direction for reform efforts with the vision that the assessment of research recognizes the diverse outputs, practices, and activities that maximize the quality and impact of research, not only internationally, but also locally relevant research. and its impact. Quora is the community of organizations that have signed the agreement. And this community offers for its members space for mutual learning and learn from each other's experiences to move together in the process of reforming research assessment. Within the coalition, members are engaged in different communities, so we also have national chapters in which institutions and organizations in the same country can discuss and move forward with implementation of the agreement in the very diverse national contexts. Quora also has 16 thematic working groups where the coalition members work together to develop and find practical solutions to various assessment challenges. Quora currently has over 700 member organizations. Most of these organizations are universities, research centers, and research infrastructures, but we also have a very broad range of other types of organizations, including academies and learned societies, research funding organizations, national and regional evaluation agencies, and other types of private non-profit organizations involved with assessment. And as Sylvie showed yesterday, most of the Quora members currently come from Europe, but Quora is also growing increasingly international. We have members from all continents, and we very warmly welcome new members to our community. So let's now take a look at the journal landscape. When we make an effort to understand how large and what the total landscape of journal looks like, we discover that the global landscape of scholarly journals is much larger and it is much more multilingual than the Web of Science and Scopus databases that are very exclusive make us believe. Even if we admit the difficulty, the problems of data quality and also coverage in ISS and center data, this overview, based on 150,000 journals, shows us that multilingualism in scholarly communication is not only a crucial question for Global South, it's also a crucial question for the Global North, for instance, Europe. And of the total number of journals, over half of them either publish in multiple languages or entirely in languages other than English. And this analysis, based on the same data, shows the biases of commercial databases in indexing journals. So we clearly see how, for instance, Scopus, which is the more inclusive of the two databases, is very much biased in favor of English language journals, and secondly, in favor of journals from Europe and North America. This means that as long as we rely on research intelligence on these databases in research assessment processes, vast majority of global knowledge production remains invisible, not recognized. If we look at specifically the journals indexed in DOAJ database, we can see that APC model works mainly for the international English language journals, mainly. And when we look at the diamond side of the picture, it appears that for journals publishing multilingually or in other languages than English, Diamond is practically the only solution. And this means that the future of Diamond open access partly depends on how we treat and value knowledge production, communication, and dissemination in all of our languages. And vice versa. Development of our languages as languages of science depends on Diamond Open Access. Let's not forget this. It's not only about the funding model. And this is a picture I quickly show by research by colleagues in Canada that the biases in indexing of journals in commercial databases are similar in case of Diamond Open Access journals. So, coming to the disadvantages, I would like to start that policymakers, leaders, evaluators still think that all research of any value to science and society is published in international English language journals, indexed in Web of Science and Scopus, or having impact factor. Well, that is not the case. It's not true. We have much valuable knowledge production in variety of languages for local purposes and so on. So when we look at the specific disadvantages, of course, the Diamond Open Access journals often have no journal impact factor, or they have lower impact factor. They have invisibility in the Web of Science and Scopus. But there is more. The contributions of researchers as authors, as peer reviewers, as editors to Diamond Open Access journals are often undervalued, considered less valuable, because these journals are published in languages other than English, or because those journals may be more locally oriented, interested in locally relevant knowledge production and communication. And that is something we have to fight against. So what difference COARA and initiatives like Latin American Forum for Research Assessment like to make? So these are the core commitments of the Agreement on Reforming Research Assessment that the 800 organizations have already signed to. Recognizing diversity of contributions, prioritizing qualitative evaluation supported by responsible use of quantitative indicators, and moving away from poor proxies, the using of journal and publication-based metrics like journal impact factor and age index, and moving away from using university rankings in research assessment. Together, these commitments show a way from very narrow definition of international excellence on which we rely toward plurality of excellencies, excellence in locally relevant research and so on. So, and also COARA is recognizing the value of multilingualism, so that we should recognize the value of contributions irrespective of language. We shouldn't use metrics that are bias-based because of language. The toolkit also refers to Helsinki Initiative on multilingualism in scholarly communication that promotes language diversity in research assessment, evaluation, and funding systems. I also want to highlight that COARA is not alone. It is very much aligned with the Latin American Forum for Research Assessment, according to which writing in English does not confer a superior merit compared to other languages, or that citation indicators extracted from databases with limited linguistic coverage should not be considered valid. And this is my final slide. I would like to also indicate one of the COARA principles, which is ensure independence and transparency of the data, infrastructure, and criteria necessary for research assessment. And because of this principle, the signatory organizations should really invest and look for opportunities to use and move away from the commercial databases toward open infrastructures for research information like OpenAlex. This aligns with the recent initiative Barcelona Declaration. But I would also like to highlight that the Diamond Open Access journal ecosystem may contribute to the assessment reform by making researchers' diverse contributions as authors, as reviewers and editors recognizable and visible in the open infrastructures through using persistent identifiers and providing rich open metadata. Even though I know these require resources and we collectively should try to help Diamond Open Access journals in this journey. So I would like to thank by referring to, we have in Finland a saying, we must not leave anyone behind. So we must move together to promote responsible research assessment and Diamond Open Access. But I think we can all agree that we can leave behind journal impact factor and reliance on Web of Science and Scopus. Thank you for your attention.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much, Jan, for this very inspiring as well. And it's awesome, you know, the global impact and the discussion. You have a lot of members in Coara, it's impressive. So to have set up this discussion at the European level, I think it's wonderful and very necessary. And in this sense, I'm Mexican. I like spicy food. I would like to add a little bit of spicy here, if I may. I think it is important to connect somehow. I know you are collaborating, FOLEC and Coara, but I think some disconnected points are still there, even the collaboration is there. I'm sorry, but I think we can. I think Diamond cannot be seen from the same lens as gold is seen. So in this global journal landscape where Diamond seems to be low, where Diamond seems to be problematic in terms of prestige, in terms of visibility through Scopus, for example, or I think it's not only unfair, but I think Diamond is measured by other principles and by other means. So let's take that into account when we look at Diamond, because Diamond, from my perspective, and I'm not the panelist, sorry to take this place, I am the moderator, but sorry. But Diamond, I think, should be assessed based on values and principles instead of the same lens that some of the current industry of journals is, you know, assessed. But let's continue the discussion. Thank you so much. And now, it's, well, last but not least, I would like to introduce, sorry about this, Professor Mosa Muchavela. Thank you so much for your presentation. The floor is yours. Wherever you want, if you want there, that's okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator, panelist. Yeah, I want to just thank you for the invitation, but also when you speak last, the advantage is that you don't really have to say much more because all of it has been said already. I do want to thank the presentations, especially from FOLEC and Coara, for framing the issue of assessment, especially in terms of the actual frameworks that we need to be considering. For me, I am not an expert in publishing, library, and just sort of the administration and communication of scholarship. But I am a research leader, and I am a leader in the university and in higher education. And in some sense, I also bear the responsibility of formulating policies, both in the universities, but also national policies around research and science generally. And I think the thing that I want to just introduce first is this issue of the value system that you started talking about. We work in an ecosystem. The discussion we are having around how to assess research when we're talking about diamond is happening in the context of practices that we already are familiar with, given how research works. In South Africa, for example, we have to take into account the nature of the university, the people that produce knowledge. We have to take into account who they are, what is it that they value, what are the things that drive them, because that's going to drive their behavior. A scientist is the one who's going to decide where to submit their journal, their article. And if this conversation is not broad enough to include the behavior and the practices of the authors, of the knowledge producers, then we will not be looking at the full ecosystem. The second thing that we have to take into account is the value of universities. What is it that universities value? And again, you have to see universities as communities where the people who produce knowledge are housed. Same as you can do with a research center or institute and so forth. This is a community where the producers of knowledge are housed. Now, we also put in place policies and principles that drive the behaviors of the knowledge producers. We decide whether we're going to rank our academics, how we're going to rank them, whether we're going to promote them, what is it that we're going to recognize when we promote them, how we're going to reward them. And in so doing, we formulate a framework, again, driving their behavior. Now, if, as UCT, we value prestige, we will drive them to gold, we will drive them to so-called prestigious journals and so forth. If we value relevance, social impact, we will drive them in that direction. If we value multilingualism, inclusivity, we will drive them in that direction. So we have to acknowledge the role that universities play in this space so that we can be intentional in influencing the policies, the value system, not just of the knowledge producers, but the value systems of the institutions as well. I want to go further by saying that as universities, each country will be different, every region will be different, but we also, as universities, have things that drive us. So, for example, as UCT, we are a public university. We're not a private university. Now, if you've got a private university, it will have its own value system. We are often influenced by government and the priorities of government. And government gives us funding, but that funding comes with conditions that are attached. Government also is going to recognize the outputs that we produce in terms of publications, books, and so forth. Government is also going to recognize in some ways and rank our academics and scientists through rating systems that we use and reward them. Government is also going to give us funding for, of course, teaching and learning, for taking in students and producing students and so forth. The funding model that government uses for university also influences us. So if government will reward prestige, it will drive us towards prestige. If government is going to reward policy impact, it will drive us towards policy impact. Societal impact, it will drive us towards societal impact. So what I'm getting at is that to drive change and the transformation that we are talking about, we have to look at the full ecosystem and understand it, and begin to think about how to influence these decision makers in the different spaces, and do it in such a way that we start to influence what is it that people value. Sometimes it's not about changing the value system. Sometimes it's about recognizing how the value system has evolved over time. Part of the reason why this conversation is important today is because the history of knowledge production itself and dissemination has evolved over time. So I often talk about UCT and the history of UCT over the last 100 years, that in the first third of the 100 years, UCT valued teaching and learning a lot. That's where value was. You wanted your top educators, the degree mattered a lot, that's where value was. Then after that, we valued research a lot. And a lot of what we see in the established systems and publishing was driven by that era. In the last 30 years, we started to value societal impact a lot, being socially engaged, being socially relevant. But most of our established systems of publishing have not responded very well to that, which is when Diamond becomes important, because it addresses that era of change. Most universities their systems are archaic, they're old, they have not evolved very well to value that. We don't know at the moment if someone does a project or an intervention that has societal impact or societal value. We don't know how to measure it. We don't even know how to reward it. And if I were to review a paper that is written around that, I don't really know how to assess it either. But I understand scientific impact, but I may not necessarily understand societal or social impact. It's only now that we are beginning to develop frameworks in South Africa, frameworks and ways of measuring all of these things that we find to be socially relevant and socially impactful. And I know there is a qualitative component and a quantitative component to it. I accept that. But a lot of it, it's driven by passion. It's driven by people who already have personal value systems that sometimes feel like they are not consistent with what we value in academia, in science. And we now have that tension whereby what is considered more social justice is almost positioned as if it's in conflict with academic freedom or academic excellence. And you start to hear these conversations about socially relevant research is poor quality, it's less quality work compared to others. You start to hear all these tensions. But for me, I think it represents the fact that the development in our knowledge ecosystem around social engagement and social relevance and societal impact is still premature, is still young. We have to allow it to evolve, but we must be active in evolving. So I don't necessarily see Diamond in itself with its value system of inclusivity, of diversity, replacing the era of science and research that blossomed at that time. I think what it's doing is it's responding to a new era that has taken hold, that makes us to be more humanistic, more relevant, more inclusive. It's a different value system. So I don't necessarily feel like when we assess it, we must even, and I agree, we must not compare it to that. The two can coexist because there is a growing sense that even universities as spaces for knowledge productions need to also change to allow us to be able to respond to the needs of our communities, the needs of our societies. We must no longer be the ivory towers that we were back then when we were very prestigious because of publishing in top journals. So I hope that the conversation can really expand to include that ecosystem and to also think about what's coming next. Because we're dealing in our environments with a lot of unemployment, and as a way of responding, we talk about entrepreneurship, and the first speaker mentioned that. We also have to think about how Diamond is going to create space to accommodate not only the social values and social justice values, but expand that sense of social justice to say, how do we employ innovation to make a difference in people's lives and actually create space for scientific writing and communication around that? Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. You were very straight to the points, important points, and thank you for reminding us the role of universities as producers of knowledge, but also as drivers of important things. So what we value is what we get in result, right? So thank you very much for that. Now, quisiera invitar a la audiencia que tenga preguntas. Muchísimas gracias. Espero que Ana María también siga conectada. Si tenemos preguntas, por favor, acercarse a los micrófonos. Asegúrense de tener sus headsets puestos, porque seguramente habrá preguntas en varios idiomas. Muchísimas gracias. Damos la apertura a la primera pregunta, por favor, de este lado. Gracias.
Sí, muchas gracias a todos los expositores y en particular a la profesora Cheto por contextualizar todas estas conversaciones en el marco de una mercantilización general de la vida, de las formas en que habitamos estos espacios, ¿no? En relación a eso, personalmente pienso que esa mercantilización de los saberes tiene mucho que ver con lo que Aníbal Quijano llamó la colonialidad del poder. Y me gustaría saber si en los contextos en los que ustedes trabajan, además del papercentrismo del que habló Judith, están viendo otras formas de mercantilización en la evaluación científica. Uno de los aspectos que yo he notado mucho en algunos contextos tiene que ver con la ponderación altísima de la capacidad para atraer recursos. Entonces, en las grillas de evaluación se considera cuánto dinero una investigadora, un investigador ha podido conseguir a lo largo de su trayectoria académica. Si es así, me gustaría que nos contaran cómo están desmantelando este tipo de abordajes que me parecen muy perniciosos y cómo opera esto en el contexto de evaluación en los lugares donde ustedes trabajan. También quisiera quizás compartir algo de la experiencia que se ha llevado adelante en Canadá en este sentido, sobre todo desde dos espacios muy importantes, el espacio de la autodeterminación indígena en la investigación, por un lado, y por otro lado, desde el espacio del movimiento de personas con discapacidades, que desde diferentes lugares se han opuesto vehementemente a la lógica productivista, mercantilista, subyacente en estas grillas de evaluación científica. Entonces, uno de los abordajes que le han sugerido a los consejos de investigación, yo trabajo en uno de ellos, es que cambiemos las grillas de evaluación para que las temporalidades de las becas, de las subvenciones cambien, de modo tal que los investigadores tengan la posibilidad de construir y reparar relaciones con las comunidades, por ejemplo, indígenas, para que esto se desarrolle, como lo ha dicho Sharon Stein, a la velocidad de la confianza y no a la velocidad del mercado y de las lógicas mercantilistas que han adoptado los sistemas académicos y los sistemas institucionalizados de construcción de saberes. Gracias.
Muchas gracias por la pregunta. Si les parece bien, 2 voluntarios de nuestro panel que les gustaría contestar. No sé, Ana María, si quieres contestar, y alguno de nosotros de este lado.
Sí, muchas gracias.
No se escucha, Ana María. ¿Pudieran ayudarnos? Ella ya abrió su micrófono.
Yo ya tengo el micrófono abierto.
Ya te escuchamos, Ana María. Adelante.
¿Se vale hablar en español?
Sí, tenemos interpretación, claro.
Bueno, sí, no, pues muchas gracias. Ha sido muy interesante este panel. Creo que hemos escuchado material como para mucha reflexión y debate. Respondiendo a la pregunta a la observación que acaba de hacer y la pregunta la compañera, en efecto, la monetarización pues ha invadido el ámbito académico y de varias formas. De hecho, desde además en estrecho vínculo con la cuestión de la evaluación. Esto, por ejemplo, en nuestro país, en México, desde la creación del Sistema Nacional de Investigadores, ¿verdad?, que asigna una beca, un estímulo económico a los que produzcan más y publiquen en las revistas de alto factor de impacto, etcétera. Pero también los evaluadores, cuando revisan un currículum, prestan mucha atención a los renglones de lo que llaman project funding, o sea, cuántos proyectos han recibido con financiamiento, independientemente de la fuente, y también cuántas becas han recibido. Y justamente eso es parte de la monetarización. Depende naturalmente mucho del contexto en el que uno trabaja. Y yo, por ejemplo, como teórica, normalmente no pido financiamiento aparte porque no tengo laboratorio, no necesito material de consumo, yo misma puedo comprar el papel si me hace falta. Por lo tanto, ese renglón en mi currículum está vacío. Pero hay currícula en los que estos renglones tienen mucho peso. Es parte de lo que hay que desmonetarizar, descomercializar. Gracias.
Gracias, Ana María. ¿Alguien más quiere complementar? Gracias.
Sí, me llamó la atención justamente en la página del CONICET. Yo soy investigadora principal del CONICET en Argentina. Esta semana, se suelen poner publicidad de las cosas que hacemos los investigadores. Y esta semana pusieron, a veces ponen, no sé, alguien de medicina descubrió algo, y esta semana lo que pusieron es, alguien de no sé qué área se ganó un proyecto grande de no sé cuántos millones. Y yo dije, ¿y esto qué tiene que ver? O sea, esto no es un descubrimiento. Porque ¿qué es lo que están buscando? Al científico entrepreneur. Ese es el modelo que tiene este gobierno y que les venía contando antes. El científico entrepreneur, el científico que se busca sus fondos afuera. A mí me tocó conocer otros modelos de otros países donde justamente lo que buscan es, te dicen, aquí tienes tu espacio, búscate el financiamiento de afuera. Nosotros solo te damos el espacio y el financiamiento lo tienes que buscar en otros países. Y ese es el modelo que se estaría buscando a futuro. Así que ojo con estas cuestiones. Está perfecta justamente la pregunta que se hizo. Y creo que hacia allí va, muy peligroso.
Muchas gracias, Judith. Pasamos directamente, si les parece, a la siguiente pregunta. Voy a hacerla de este lado. Quizá que acá es en español, vamos a dejar una y una en cada idioma, si me permites un momentito. Voy a dar la palabra.
Okay, thank you very much. Please, I have to apologize. I wouldn't know whether my question has been answered because I'm not understanding what you were saying. But then I want to appreciate Anne for telling us that the Diamond Open Access and abandoning the assessment method that is determined for us by the Web of Science, Scopus, and the rest, we should slow down to that. I want to appreciate, and also appreciate Prof for telling us that now you are responding because you are into policy, responding to the decision or the plan of government as well as the environmental or community needs. And you say that the authors, they have the right to decide where to publish. But going by the Diamond Open Access, I think since you are in charge of policy, when I talk about you, I'm talking about other vice chancellors, you can decide on this production and you can have so many outlets while leaving the issue of distribution, that's metadata, and archiving for the commercial outlets, so that you can, being in charge of production, that is the publishing, you can decide and access the publication based on the need and the impact it's going to make to the community, to the country, and even the global community. So I think the ball is still in your court in spite of the personal decision of the author. If you float so many outlets for them to publish, and then the weight of paying for that assessment, publication assessment, APC, will be reduced, and you use it to produce very quality outlets in the production, while you leave the metadata, aggregation, and archiving for the commercial publishers. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
I feel very exposed. I need protection. Thank you for those comments. I think this is what I was trying to get at when I was saying, I'm sitting here, I'm listening, and I have an appreciation of the arguments that are made to try and transform the space. But I'm also thinking already of other spaces that we have to deal with in the broader ecosystem. I'll be honest with you and say that, the point that was made earlier about the contestation of power is real. It's a real contestation of power. And all the players have found ways of making sure that they've got little holds on different spaces to make sure that they can control the space. So you don't just wake up and decide that, okay, no, we're not going to publish there, we're going to publish there, because you'll pay a big price. And you can drive the university overnight into bankruptcy, and it can collapse. So if you're going to do it, you also have to do it in a very responsible manner. Sometimes it means that change needs to happen slowly, and sometimes it feels like it's taken too long, but it does need to happen. And that's why one of the things I want to add here is that I think, in a way, we have to think of Diamond also not necessarily as a completely free service. Somebody is absorbing costs. Yeah. And we have to, I understand, we don't necessarily want to price things with big profit margins. We want to be able to pay for the costs that we incur for all that we do, so the costs can be reasonable. So that's the idea. I know that in some spaces, especially in the commercial, the pricing makes no sense. when you look at the actual costs that they incur and what they charge, it's ridiculous. But I do think that, as my colleagues said here at UCT, that they said to me, and these are people who are social justice activists, and they said to me, we don't trust men in suits. And look at me, right? I am considered one of those people who's going to put the price very high for the profit margin so that we can get returns, and for third stream income, entrepreneurship that we introduce for scientists to bring in income into the university. But I think it is still a reality for me that to run this institution, I need some money. So I'm not necessarily here to turn a profit and become a multi-billionaire like Elon Musk, no. But I do need to run the business, make sure the lights are on, make sure that things are working. And so that's what I mean by being responsible. So I think in the conversation, let's include that so that at least even as we talk about the transformation, it can be a little bit more realistic, and it's pragmatic. It doesn't collapse the kind of system that we are working in.
Thank you so much. Very quickly.
Well, I want to protect you. I only want to say, one, that I really believe in university. And another thing is that we need to fight from inside university, not from outside university. And from the system, from inside the system. Only that.
Thank you, Judith. Para hacer esto un poquito más eficiente, porque la evaluación de la investigación es tan amplia, tenemos tanto que resolver que hay 2 sesiones de evaluación de investigación y todavía vamos a seguir después del break con otro panel de evaluación de la investigación moderado por Lidia, pero voy a tomar, si les parece bien, hay 3 preguntas más, las tomaremos las 3 preguntas juntas. Y si les parece bien a los panelistas, les daré la palabra a todos para un comentario final para abordar las 3 preguntas que quedan, que nos van a hacer ahora, si les parece bien. Adelante, por favor.
Sí, buenos días. Mi nombre es Alejandra Nardi, de la Universidad Nacional de Córdoba, Argentina. Bueno, quería felicitar al panel, que ha sido realmente muy brillante para mí, pero tengo 2 comentarios. Uno para Judith Naidorf, que me parece excelente la idea de formar evaluadores en el entorno de ciencia abierta. Y el otro es para el profesor Moza, ¿sí? Moza Vela, que es muy importante lo que él menciona respecto a profundizar en el impacto social de la producción científica. Y solamente voy a hacer un pequeñito comentario. Estamos desde nuestra universidad monitoreando un solo trabajo, por ahora, que trata sobre procedimientos de bajo costo sobre el cáncer intrauterino. Este trabajo se publica en el 2012, que fue cuando se lanzó el repositorio en nuestra institución, y la consulta de este trabajo, que es una tesis, es permanente y ha sido el trabajo más consultado del repositorio institucional y lo sigue siendo, y calculo yo que eso forma parte del impacto social. A mí me gustaría ver que próximos foros o en otros ámbitos se profundizara sobre el impacto social de la producción. Esto acallaría muchas voces. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias. Tomo la pregunta de acá y finalizamos.
Voy a tratar preguntar en español, pero mi español es muy malo, entonces gracias por su paciencia con eso. Antes de mi pregunta, tengo que admitir que mi perspectiva es de una editorial del norte global, sin lucro, pero basada en los Estados Unidos. Entonces, bueno, dentro de esta discusión me parece que hay 2 rutas. Hay una opción para trabajar dentro del sistema dominante, como dice el profesor Moshavela, es una opción muy pragmática, pero hay también una opción más radical que significa una acción colectiva entre las poblaciones de África, Latinoamérica, Asia, y quiero preguntar a todas las personas que están aquí, ¿por qué no estamos hablando más sobre acciones colectivas en adición al proceso diamante? Eso es. Hay otras posibilidades que no estamos hablando. Yo no sé por qué, pero I think it's important, so I just wanted to ask. Sorry. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, tu español es perfecto, muchas gracias. Adelante,
Bueno,
la última.
Voy a tratar de ser rápida, sin hablar muy rápido. Soy Daniela Perrota, de la Universidad de Buenos Aires, y acompañando a CLACSO, el Consejo Latinoamericano de Ciencias Sociales, y voy en línea con la colega que habló en un muy buen español. Creo que todos acá somos una comunidad de práctica. Estamos todos vinculados y convencidos en el derecho a la ciencia. Y yo agregaría, después de escuchar al profesor Moza y por supuesto a Judith, a Ariana y a todos mis colegas latinoamericanos, del derecho a la universidad, del derecho a la educación, donde nosotros como región, como Latinoamérica, hemos hecho mucho por colocarlo en conferencias mundiales. Todos aquí, como comunidad de práctica, estamos convencidas que es un bien público y social, que debe ser garantizado, que debe ser financiado, y el Estado también tiene que estar acá presente. Me parece que acá lo que estamos buscando es constantemente modificar reglas, normas, prácticas, las consideramos injustas, desiguales, predatorias, estuvimos hablando de todo esto. Ahora bien, en línea con la última colega, ¿cómo hacemos esto? ¿Quién nos falta en la discusión? Who's missing here? Me parece que si la noción de bien público y social se vincula específicamente con esa sociedad, queremos mirar el impacto de esas investigaciones, queremos colocar en primer lugar nuestras revistas diamantes, que son fuente de prestigio para nosotros, ¿dónde está la sociedad con la que nos vinculamos y podemos hacer todo eso? ¿Qué esfuerzos estamos haciendo acá para traer a la sociedad a este piso? A los usuarios, a los stakeholders, a los socios no académicos, para que puedan participar de estas iniciativas. Son nuestro socio más fuerte para torcear estas peleas. Me parece que la participación de esos otros, que hoy no están acá, tiene pistas para poder promover y avanzar en cambios que son más profundos, ¿no? Como reflexión. Creo que esta comunidad de práctica, en línea con la colega anterior, necesita establecer esas articulaciones con esos otros que van a reforzar nuestra posición y poder transformar las normas globales que queremos transformar. Y acá el sur tiene mucho para decir, Latinoamérica, África, incluimos a Asia, pero trabajemos juntos y juntas. Antes lo hicimos, lo podemos seguir haciendo. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Well, I think we receive challenges instead of questions. So we're going in reverse order, if you all agree. So, Professor Moshavela first. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I want to thank colleagues for those comments. I think it's a fair point to say that we need to think about how to assess impact and agree. And when I link it to the comment about those countries that are concerned about this, that are concerned about diversity and inclusion, coming together to create a system that works for them and support Diamond for the benefit of, for a lack of a better word, Global South, then maybe it's right. It's right that we say the issue here is not just about cost. The issue is not just about visibility. We're talking about languages. It means that we want inclusion. And maybe that is not a concern for the dominant sector, the dominant discourse. Maybe it's just our concern. If it is our concern, we don't expect them to prioritize it. Maybe the issue here is about the fact that we still want scientific knowledge to uphold dignity of our people. Maybe dignity is not something that matters to certain parts of the world. It should, maybe it doesn't. Maybe here we want knowledge to actually make tangible difference in people's lives. And if that's what we want, then we are coming up with a value proposition for Diamond that goes beyond just costs. And that value proposition needs to be articulated and be clear. And then we have to say, who are the stakeholders that have vested interest in that value proposition? And those are the people that are going to drive Diamond. And so I agree with that radical thought to say, maybe here we're thinking about this wrong. Maybe we just need to say, actually, this is a priority for certain people, and for those that feel it is a priority for them, they can drive it. And those who are in the global north, who identify with it, can support it and be part of it without necessarily seeing Diamond being in competition with the others. So I think I like that idea of a value system that applies to the countries that are represented here, and a value proposition for Diamond that goes beyond just thinking of Diamond in relation to gold, but really thinking of Diamond in relation to the countries that seek to benefit from the approach that Diamond is taking.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Jan, please, the floor is yours.
No, I think very, very, very wise words, and I thank very much for the good, interesting, and constructive also comments. And I fully understand also Rector's difficulty in managing situation in a university between the pressure from the government, funding models, and also taking into account also different ideas from the different parts of the research community in the university. And of course, different ways of publishing. There are also disciplinary differences that have to be taken into consideration, and consideration also in the impact and use of languages. In STEM fields, maybe sometimes the value of multilingualism is a bit different, more focused on the science communication, whereas in social sciences and humanities, it is really imperative to also communicate in your own language, in the language of the people who are concerned with the research directly for the inclusion. So I don't know what further to add. I simply add, there was a comment about commercialization that I am also, it's not only about the cost. I'm really concerned about the power that it is scientific communities that should be in the driving seat of the scientific standards of quality. And now it seems increasingly, especially it has surfaced with the APC model, that is pushing journals to publish more and more in hope of return in form of APC. And this drive, this commercial publisher competition for the market share in publications is actually now becoming to take the driver's seat in conditioning the quality standards and processes, in making the processes faster, finding shortcuts. So I would also look at the Diamond Open Access also from this perspective, that we can really, as a scientific communities, uphold the quality standards that science requires.
Thank you so much, Jan. Judith.
Bueno, quiero aprovechar este momento para rendir un homenaje como corresponde a la doctora Cheto, aquí presente online. Quiero invitar a todos ustedes a leer el currículum en línea de la doctora y reconocer que es la doctora quien ha militado, no sé cómo van a traducir la palabra militado, el el acceso abierto no comercial. Así lo llamamos en América Latina. Por esta cuestión de que no sabemos cómo se interpreta la palabra diamante, sabemos que sobre eso ha habido y hay siempre discusiones. Bueno, es una linda palabra, los diamantes son lindas palabras y se atribuyen a diversas cuestiones, pero a nosotros nos gusta hablar de acceso abierto no comercial. La doctora ha sido bastante enfática y quiero cerrar mis últimas palabras sumándome a ese acento que ha puesto la doctora, no solamente hoy en su presentación, sino en toda su vida y en su trayectoria de los últimos años y de tantos años que también Ariana remarcó. Así que bueno, en ese sentido solamente podría recalcar algunas cuestiones que así planteaba y invitarles a todas y a todos el año que viene, en junio, a encontrarnos en el Foro Latinoamericano de Ciencias Sociales en Bogotá para seguir discutiendo estas y muchas cosas, porque las nuevas derechas en todo el mundo vienen mostrándonos un mundo horrible que nosotros y desde las universidades seguramente mucho tenemos para decir. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Judith. Gracias. Y me sumo a las dos cosas, me sumo al reconocimiento a lo que significa y la labor de la doctora Ana María Cheto, que es realmente un honor, sí, y todos hemos aprendido de ella. Y me sumo a recordar que para nosotros el concepto de acceso abierto diamante no hace sentido en América Latina, es el acceso abierto no comercial, y quizás sea mejor regresar al concepto original para tener claro qué es lo que estamos discutiendo aquí. Doctora Ana María, sin más, ¿podría cerrar el panel, por favor, con su comentario?
Muchas gracias, Ariana, y gracias, Judith, por esas bellas palabras. Perhaps I should speak in English so that you don't have to so much problem with the translation. I would like to refer to several things that have been mentioned. One of them is how to measure social impact. And this is a question that has many answers, because it depends very much on the context. Where is science being practiced, and what for, and by whom, and with whom? I am sure that the concept of social impact and the way of measuring it would be different in Finland, for instance, than it would be in my own country, in Mexico. And there are some scientists who are working with communities which are different knowledge holders and are co-creating new knowledge of social and environmental impact. So that's something that is very favorable and that should be valued before we put, let's say, an indicator. We have to value that. And certainly in South Africa, there may be other examples different from the ones that are practiced in other places. So this is a very contextual aspect that has to be taken into account. One cannot universalize the social impact because of its context dependence. But there are things that we have to certainly try to do together, and I very much appreciate what has been said by the speaker about it. One has to take also into account that our community, our academic community, is behaving according to what it has been asked to do, what it is being told to do, and how it is being assessed. And if policy decision makers change the rules, the community will also adapt to these rules, because that's what has been happening in the past. So, of course, we from the academic community have to work together and have to mobilize others, but as long as the policymakers don't change the rules, don't take their decisions, we will continue our struggle, and we won't be able to do the change alone. Multilingualism is very, very important. Thank you, Jan, for reminding us of that. I am optimistic. I'm not a pessimist, although there are countries where the situation nowadays is very, very complicated, and we are with the Argentinian colleagues and support them, you at least morally, and I also hope in other ways, so that you survive this very difficult era in your country. But we have to think that important things are happening nowadays in the geopolitics around the world, and some of these, I think, are signs that the situation will change in the future, not in the near future, because of the tensions of this reshuffling and geopolitical readjustments. We won't be able to see a positive change in the near future. But I do think that the world and the political world, the economic, financial world, and all that goes with it are undergoing changes that are badly needed, and that hopefully also with our struggles and with our contributions can lead to a world order that is polyphonic, where all voices can be heard, not only all languages, but also all voices. So let us end this session with a more optimistic and more positive outlook. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ana María. Y muchas gracias a todos ustedes por la participación, por la energía en esta sesión. Nos merecemos un café, así es que vamos al break. Todos, por favor.